What if I told you Meteora dropped an update on the 30th of July that could potentially 2x your liquidity providing fees when DLMMing? I am of course talking about the 1400 bin dynamic positions feature, which they've recently released, and today I'm going to show you exactly how this works, why it's a game changer, and more importantly, a real comparison between the old 100 bin setup versus the new 20 bin configuration over the exact same range. Here's the thing. Up until now, we've been limited in how we could optimize our positions. You typically choose between the wider bin ranges for convenience or, the tighter bin ranges for better fee capture, but you couldn't easily replicate the same coverage with maximum efficiency in, the tighter bin pool as you could the larger one without quite a lot of effort. But that limitation is now gone. So previously, if I wanted to make a new position, I would put a Solana in and I would be able to create a curve, and this would be the limit of the position we would make. And if I wanted to extend this any further, instead of doing this new extended long bid ask feature, if I did this instead, what it would do is make two separate positions that would show up on my dashboard separately, and the first one would be a bid ask and the second one would also be a bid ask. And it's really not executing how we would want to. It takes a lot of time opening and closing all these positions. You could add up to 6 or 10 of these all at once. It's very horrible to rebalance, and it was costing a lot in fees. So now with up to 1400 bins, you can basically create the same range in a 20 bin pool with any fee percent you want, even the new ones such as 2% or 5% Meteora has, as you could in something like an 100 bin pool, but with significantly better fee capture potential. Why? Because smaller bins mean more frequent trades, and more frequent trades mean more fees. So what I'm able to do is stick the number 49% in here, and now looking at this curve, it's hard to look at. It's a lot of bins, but we are replicating the exact range we would have in a 100 bin pool, which is covering 70 bins. You will notice, obviously, the SOL needed to create the positions is higher, and this is something to consider, but you can see it is fully refundable in this case. And I'll just, explain the bin steps in a little bit more detail, but basically what's happening is the lower bin steps with these price points, they are closer together. So when the price moves through these tighter ranges, we trigger more transactions because traders experience smoother, more predictable price movements. And you can just see it demonstrated here with an example I just have live. You can see this spark pool. It's moving between these huge shallow bins on these very, granular chart. But if we look over on the 100 bin, if I was to make this position roughly covering the same range, we're not going to get the same kind of price action. I did actually mess up the range a bit if it does even open. But as you can see, this range only has about 8 bins here, where for a very similar range, we have, almost 70. So we're capturing every little price movement. We're a lot more likely to get the transactions going through our bins right here. So now I think the final thing to cover, now we know how this kind of fundamentally has changed how everyone is LPing. It's, deciding on which pools would you pick for what kind of thing, because 100 bin pools aren't completely useless, and 20 bin pools aren't perfect for everything. And we also do have to consider the fee. Now, I'm not going to dive in to every single example, as that would be a very long video, and I think it should be spread out across a few. So for your daily kind of low cap runners, where you're, most likely maybe sub $1 million, you're very low market cap, maybe higher, they're very volatile, you're still going to want to stick to your 100, 200 bin pools. I'm sure if we go down here, 5% pools, maybe 100, and these new 10% fee pools are very effective at cancelling out impermanent loss on coins that are very volatile. But this has made a shift in that instead of just LPing coins that, are at 50 million market cap, 100 million, I'm not sure many examples, but if we went on Uranus, it has fallen a lot now. But, this is a classic coin which we kind of expected to trend sideways for a while. Or I think a very good example is obviously Fart coin, which is around 1 million. This coin the 20 bin pool for this was meta for so long with how it was trading sideways. And very often we use the 20 bin 0.2% fee for that. But now we use it on a much wider variety of coins. Basically any coin which breaks out. I'm looking at Spark. This is just kind of, the daily coin which is running right now. And if we go over, we can see the 20 bin 0.2% fee pool is the meta for this one. We can see there is the 22% with some TVL in, but to be honest, there's no science to it exactly. There's a lot of factors which decide which pool you go in. But earlier I was in this 100 bin pool, and now it's clear that all the TVL has moved over to this particular pool, and we can set up these really wide ranges, or we can still go really tight if we want to and capture the fees in this top range. We get the options for both. But do remember the refundable and non-refundable fee. Of course, here, even if we go minus 50%, we are going to get that refundable fee. But sometimes if the bins have not been paid for already, you will not see it all being refundable, and you may end up paying for some. So now what I'm going to do is actually show a live practical example comparing two pools. It's not the best example, and I don't print the most amount of fees, but it does demonstrate using the same range with pools with very similar TVL and very similar percent of my liquidity in each bin, which one performs better. So make sure to keep watching. So what I am going to do is set up a position on a token. Currently I'm looking at this Bartler's coin. It's just broken out. I'm going to set up a position in the 20 bin 2% pool and also the 100 bin 1% pool, where we're seeing pretty similar TVL. There is a bit of a difference, and obviously liquidity is distributed differently. We're going to set up a position and see which can print better. Of course, as due to what we spoke about, probably going to be the 22%, but we could see how this performs depending on how the coin volatility goes. So I have gone ahead and made the positions covering a minus 40% range. It looks like the coin did just pump again, so we might have to rebalance. But, I think we should be able to get in range for this and make a position for it and see the outcome. So it's been a bit of time. I've gone out, and it looks like we did have a bit of a dip and a pump. Now the pool does look very diluted. It's not giving the best fees. But, regardless of that fact, we can still compare the two pools. Now, the other thing to know is obviously we want to look at probably the TVL where our liquidity was in range. If it differs from the two pool, you can clearly see in the 100 bin pool, we were around 0.1%. And in the 20 bin pool, we were actually very similar amounts. And we did kind of dip around here. So pretty similar in both pools as our percent of the liquidity, even though I was using very different Solana amounts. By using this 6 Solana here and 1 Solana here, we got a pretty similar balance to, kind of simulate the same thing. So now to look at the percent of fees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close them both out and load up the profit cards. So this is where we can compare the percent wins, and we can clearly see from the 20 bin pool, we got about a 4.41% gain, and these were pretty much covering the exact same range, same curve shape. And on the 100 bin pool, we got around a 3.1% gain. So comparing these two is a whole 1.3% difference in profit, which I think is pretty huge when comparing, a token like this.